Well, there's some naked ambition going on in the pro wrestling industry, apparently. I said a lot of people are starting to talk about this. There are people now that they're convinced, first of all, that you're on a one-man crusade to just eliminate, eradicate, and decimate the Rock. Poor Dwayne. He's put upon.
I tell the truth, and it upsets people who don't want that truth to be a reality. I hear from people like, "You must be miserable." Dude, I'm like the happiest person I know. But you're miserable because I'm telling the truth about something you love and don't want to believe. But you'll come around. Mr. and Mrs. Listener out there, everyone else has.
This is Mr. and Mrs. First Nighter. Well, there are the segment, though, that believe that you are anti-rock, and I was always, up until somewhat recently, very pro-rock. Because, well, he's a star. He can say anything. He can do anything. Until he started saying anything and literally doing anything. and then it just become... And then he wanted to become a heel, but then he wanted to be liked for being such a heel. And it started to make my head hurt, and it started to make me think... Because, if Seinfeld was a hit television program watched widely for 8 or 9 seasons, but if there had been a 5th member of the regular cast, if it had been the biggest star in the world at the period of time that show, if Tom Cruise had been the 5th guy in Seinfeld, but he had only come in like every season and a half, and then everything circulated around him to the expense of all of the other things that they had going for a couple of shows, and then he's gone. Maybe that wouldn't have worked either. It's just, anyway, that's where I'm at, is that, yeah, Rock is a great pro wrestling personality and a big star, but now I think he's embraced that he can just come in and just blurt out anything or just do whatever, even if it conflicts with things that have been going on, that have been pointed to and led to and planned for months and months and months. And they're saying it again. Even Uncle Dave, who apparently sends The Rock's mother flowers every Mother's Day. I mean, he's been close to the family. Just, love. I think he's in their home movies. And he is even starting to say that, yes, there's talk that he just came in and kind of said, what about we do this? Hey, should we talk about a little of this, Brian?
Yeah, I mean, specifically everything that just went down, because obviously after the major success that was the John Cena heel turn at Elimination Chamber, you started hearing from people, see, it was all neatly planned out long in advance. You just have to sit back and be patient. And I think the reality of the situation, and some of us have known it, and more people probably will, and it'll be a growing story, I would think, in the years ahead, is, like you said, Dwayne Johnson swooping in with his own writers, with his own creative, producing himself, doing whatever he wants. And it's a tough dynamic. When I said a few weeks ago there's a Rock problem, this is what I'm talking about. The Rock's agent runs the company. The Rock's childhood friend is Triple H's partner in running WWE and does a great job. And he has a lot more on his plate now because they just launched a boxing company that he's going to be in charge of.
What's next? Curling?
But
the Canadians are doubled over laughing. Go ahead.
But the Rock at his press conference kind of said it, he puts a very rosy spin on everything, as an executive should publicly. Although, again, not a heel who just did an angle shouldn't be coming out there to say, yeah, I did such a wonderful job as the bad guy character, the final boss, that it's stupid to do it now. Wait a while. You can wait a while. But he said it. Paul and his team are doing great. And then me and Brian Gewirtz and Maya, my team, we come in and do our thing. So if you have an average year, where the booker, for lack of a better term, Paul Levesque, is laying out everything, not just across Raw, but it's Raw and it's SmackDown and it's increasingly involving NXT, which involves other things now like TNA. There's a whole lot on his plate. And someone just comes in and says, it's time to change creative because this is what me and my team decided we should do without consulting any of you. And even if you're a giant Rock fan, you have to understand how problematic that is. And if you say, and we'll get back to this to tie this together, if you say, see, the Cena turn, it all makes sense. It turns out much like last year, the pivot that was forced by, the fans get a lot of the credit and they deserve it, but a lot of it also was internal pushback from people who could. And it seems that potentially that may have happened again, leading to the Cena turn.
Well, because apparently poor John was choice number 2. That the Rock's original idea was that Cody would indeed align himself with The Rock. But when that, and who knows, what was it shot down? Did Cody turn it down? Was it a combination of all of these things? But that's, that shows you there that, what the fuck? They were doing something. Or they were going to do something different, and they're pivoting. And what bolsters the idea that there were last-minute changes during the day, even with all of this stuff going on, was that, remember, and I think you mentioned it when we talked about the show, they played the Rock video in the middle of the show, so you thought that was going to be next, was the Rock and Cody's decision, and then they went into... What was it, Owens and Zayn?
Yeah.
And because they changed the format so late in the day. Originally, they were going to do that. They were going to go from the Rock video to the Rock Cody segment. And that was changed so late that they didn't even get the proper runtime established for the video. And they were going to end with the lights out unsanctioned match, where they dropped the cow and hit each other with everything except common sense. But they couldn't do that because when Cena was just originally going to win the Elimination Chamber, that was fine. But then Cena turning on Cody, which was not originally scheduled as part of the programming, wouldn't have made sense for anything to follow that. So they fucking re-racked the whole goddamn show at last minute. And there's evidence to support that theory, as well as unnamed people being quoted as saying it.
The other thing is, for everyone who compared the Cena turn to, for the people who didn't like it, the comparison we heard was Steve Austin turning at WrestleMania 17. Steve Austin and The Rock, and he went with Vince McMahon.
Yes.
If Cody had turned, that's what it would have been. It would have been the most nonsensical time to turn him heel.
And it would probably have not as big as effect on business. Today it's such a juggernaut, it's almost bulletproof, but it would have hurt their business and hurt their ability to hurt Cody, hurt their business, and hurt their ability to get somebody in that Cody position again, because you've wronged another generation of fans. They'll have wounded feelings. With the Cena people, there is some element of, when they were kids or they were whatever, the innocent of years of their life. That's been a long time ago. Now they're just, okay, he's kicking people in the balls. It's Cody's era now, and that would have been similar to an Austin type of thing. But again, that's where I mentioned Uncle Dave, because he described the story that The Rock is telling. He said after the show, Dwayne Johnson claimed that everything was planned for the long game from Bad Blood, although others have called that version the Hulk Hogan version of the story. And this can't be planned this way. Because there, again, from Big Show to Big Show, and I'm not talking about Paul White, from the Rock's appearances, they whipped the shit out of each other, beat the shit out of each other, and bled, and it was hard feelings, and then I'll see you again. Remember when Rock walked off into the sunset to go back and, trudge through the desert making movies in Hollywood? I'll see you again someday. And then he came back and stared at everybody. And then was he a heel again? Then he was a baby face. Then he was hugging and kissing them. Then he turned back and forth in one promo. Then he's goddamn wiping the guy's blood on a fucking belt with a rap star the day before, or the night before the early morning press conference, where he's telling people that he had such fun creating this such evil character that he just play acted. He's just coming in and doing whatever the fuck. Talk me down.
I think the damage that his reputation took from Black Adam affected him. That's not to say he's not still getting big opportunities. He has a deal with Disney. But I think people knowing that it was his creative and his direction and his ex-wife and manager involved, that made that project a disaster for DC and the studio. And I think with wrestling, The Rock's always had a safe place that he can come back to and do almost nothing. And that's one of the reasons I started to not like his on-air performances. Not right now, but a few years ago, because he was doing nothing. It was just coasting to get a nice night out of it. Now he needs it. But now he wants this weird recognition. It's not even approval. It's recognition. When we played the press conference audio, Triple H was out there earlier that night, and to the best of his ability in that kind of setting, kind of walks the line of trying to not completely give away kayfabe. But I'm not saying he's going to lie or work anyone.
Right, but at the same time, he's being somewhat respectful and, not just showing you, here's where we hide the handkerchief that comes out of my fucking collar.
But he's out there earlier there talking about an overarching, series of questions about the night, about the record, whatever it was, record gate, record revenue, everything's always a record. But then about the individual wrestlers on the show. And then it ends with Dwayne Johnson coming out there like he's running the show. And in a lot of ways, for certain things, he is. And I think that is a problem. And don't just believe there is no problem because The Rock comes out there, an actor comes out there and says, everything's great. We get along great. Everything's working great. And my creative is great. There is a level of not in touch with what's happening right now that The Rock has, and that doesn't take away from the things that work. And by the way, he's still a dynamic television performer. For the people who think like, oh, you can't say anything good about The Rock, I can. Some of you can't face the reality of the bad shit. You go, look at the good shit, that's easy. And I don't know how many more years this could happen around WrestleMania time, where starting in whatever it was, November, October, he just swoops in, starts doing his own things. If you're trying to book out a WrestleMania.
Well, remember, he just swooped in to stare in October. He just showed up for real again a few weeks ago.
Yeah. And that's what happened last year, too. It was around January. All of a sudden, he started showing up. And again, if you have plans and you're trying to lay stuff out, it's hard if someone comes in and their first demand is, I want to turn Cody heel and have him as being under me. It's not even just have Cody turn heel, which there was a time to do that. If Cody had stayed in AEW, he had to become a heel. He wanted to be a babyface. He came to WWE, and it worked out better than he ever could have hoped for. If you turned him heel and then made him subservient to The Rock, would have killed him dead. It would have killed the audience enthusiasm, too.
Well, and let's talk about this for a second, because Cody, allegedly, a lot of people saying it, was Rock's first choice, but when, again, that was somehow averted by method or methods unknown, then they went to John because Cena was the number 2 choice. Well, what about this guy? So automatically now that's why I thought the feeling was, to me, turning John Cena heel came out of maybe not nowhere, but certainly not a long fucking planned out thing. And John said, okay, when they came to him, but now they're taking an idea that was for one guy and they're using the same idea for another guy, and everybody's situation is always different. So wouldn't you just to me have started from scratch with an idea or just left it lay? But nevertheless, now that if I hear that story and that if that's true, that Cena said, okay, I'll do it, because Cody was not going to do it, then it's pretty obvious that he's got to get, as we talked about on the last show, we were shocked. You said, well, he'll turn back at the end of the year or whatever and retire that way. That's probably how they pitched it to him. Turn heel and we can get this match and that match and the other match with you against these baby faces, but by the end of the year, we'll turn you back some way. And he said, yeah, okay, I don't give a shit. Go ahead.
What if he doesn't retire? What if it was a heel saying something that wasn't true?
But I don't know that it was a heel saying something that wasn't true, because to me, it's like he's already been retired and he just came back to fucking retire again. I mean, is it a year? Does he go till next fucking March? Okay, maybe whatever the fuck, or next WrestleMania, but it ain't gonna be long. We're not talking years. And again, if in 4 years he's the fucking top heel, then somebody play this back for me.
And he has a good story to tell. We haven't heard anyone talk yet. Again, Raw took place 2 days later. No Rock, no Cena. But Cena, every time he's come back in the last 4 years or so, he's lost. He lost every match. Austin Theory, Bray Wyatt. I can't remember the last match he won before the Royal Rumble. Solo Sikoa, didn't Solo beat him too? So now there's at least a reason I'm coming back and I want to win the title. I have to do something different. There's reasoning there if it's explained. But if Cody had turned, it would have been a disaster and there would have been no valid reasoning that would have worked.
Oh, I agree with you there. And one more thing about John, and we'll talk about something else that we may have called, is with Jonathan, the reason why that he has lost most of the time or all the time or whatever, because he has only been a part-time guy in wrestling for a while now. And he's a guy who understands business, and he's not greedy about, getting somebody else over and all that stuff. But I think you can tell that this came up because the new ownership, they probably made him a hell of an offer for millions and millions of dollars to come back and do a year. And if they said, yeah, hey, stick around for another quarter and go to WrestleMania, I'm sure he'd do that too. But it ain't going to be long. And at some point, even then, you risk not going out with a bang because people get a sour taste in their mouth because you didn't go out when you said you were going to. So I think he's probably going to honor mostly and or in principle the idea that he's not going to be in these towns multiple times, because then they've already said the last time in every town, then they're going to lie to all those people that are their most ardent ticket buyers in these markets where he's supposed to be in for the last time. If he was to come back next year, why?
Did they lie? Did they lie or did the heel lie?
Well, no, that anymore in today's environment, they know it's the company fucking lying, because the people buying the tickets in a lot of cases are the most dedicated consumers. And they'd be like, wait a minute, he just had his fucking last match here 9 months ago. That would be bullshit. I think it would hurt consumer confidence. I don't think any of them want that. All the Office might, but I don't think Cena does. So I'm thinking that somehow by the end of this run, whether it's the year or the fucking run, he will switch back babyface and still be able to go out with somewhat of a bang. He might not win his last match, but he'll go out with the audience's sympathy and appreciation instead of slinking off like a dirty heel. That's my prediction.
This last year is like the last 3 years of Andre's career. Andre suddenly turns heel, and then he's a heel the entire time. And his last night, WrestleMania, or his last night as an active wrestler, him and Haku lose, and then he turns babyface against Bobby Heenan, and Haku leaves with people cheering him for the last time.
Well, but it ain't going to take 3 years.
Right. They'll do it in 1 year.
Cena will be still more mobile than Andre was, poor thing.